Hi guys. Hello. Hi everybody. How you doing? My name is Natalie Mukami. I work with Tom and some people here in Shamiri. And there we go. Please put your hands together for our speaker, Tom.
Yes, mental health is a very personal, it's a very personal topic, and I was asked to talk about three things. So the first was my experience as an entrepreneur when I was 18. So I started my first company when I was 18, and then the second was how I got into mental health. And then the third is, basically what we do at Shamiri. Yeah, so my first venture was called Greencha, and basically the idea behind Greencha was 80% of families use dirty fuels. So these were dirty charcoal, firewood, kerosene lamps, etc. And so the idea was that, it will be possible to be able to move these families to using clean cooking fuels. And of course, this is important for the environment. But I'll be honest, I think for me, my connection with problems has been more from a personal perspective. Yes, the environment is really important, but there is a human toll on mental health, on climate change. And climate change is, before it is an environmental issue, it is a human issue. It's a personal issue. And the lives at stake, the communities, which are being really, kind of affected by this. And so that was for me the reason why I decided to work in the climate change space. But the theme in my career, which I'll talk about at the end, is I've always found myself working in spaces before they become cool. So right now everyone is working in climate change, right? But in 2012, 2013, no one was really working into climate change. It wasn't like quote unquote the cool thing, kind of back then. And so when you're working in a space which is not cool, you're only 18 years, you only have a high school degree, obviously, kind of the stakes are piled, quote unquote, against you, right? And then there's also the other thing which we need to think about as, founders or people who work in this space is often, and there's a huge challenge with a lot of products that are in Kenya and in similar markets, is often we bring inferior products in the market because you're trying to quote unquote bring products, for the quote unquote global South market. And so my hope is there's a lot of young people here who are interested in entrepreneurship. At least we should challenge ourselves to, yes, work at the frontier, but also try to work at the cutting edge. And for me, that was one of the reasons, amongst other reasons, why I decided to transition out of the clean energy space, was because all of the solutions that are there in the clean energy space, at least from a clean cooking perspective, are not, you will go to Kibera and you sell something to someone in Kibera, but it's something you will use for yourself, right? And if you're building and selling a product that you yourself don't want to use or you're not proud of, then you're kind of in the wrong space, or you're kind of doing, the wrong thing. So anyway, so that was one of the reasons why I transitioned out of that space. But the second reason was, also just the reality that as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, you just don't know shit. You can tell yourself that you can build a company and you can build an organization, but you really can't. There is a reason why, people look for experience, right? Once in a while, you have outliers, people who can do it, but normally, if you're doing something for your first time, it is a learning experience and you need to just embrace that you're going to fail. So my experience and my journey into mental health comes from me just realizing both the individual as well as the collective trauma of the experiences that I had envisioned as life. I went through my life, I think until I was 22, not really thinking that mental health was an important thing, like was a critical thing, something that you kind of care about. And for me, that was a really shocking thing, like it's just like thinking that you've had this really perfect, good experience and realizing that everything that you know and most of the things that made you who you are also really messed you up like at the same time, and having this cognitive dissonance where you have this really powerful moments in your life which you look at with so much pride, but also left this really strong marks in your life that really follow you and will follow you for the rest of your life. It's when I realized that I became curious, right? And I was lucky that I was in a space where my curiosity was encouraged and kind of was welcomed. And I think one of the first things I did was join a youth mental health lab, where this was what they were doing every day was studying mental health, thinking about mental health. And I joined it just from the experience of trying to understand my experiences for myself, and in so doing just realizing just the massive nature of and just how much this experience was shared. Mental health is one of those few things universally where all over the world we are equally messed up. So the quote-unquote gold standard of care in the US is as shit as the gold standard of care in Kenya. And so back to my earlier point, one thing that also interested me in this space from a intellectual and innovation perspective was that this was one of the few spaces where you could actually innovate at the cutting edge, because we didn't have solutions that we could copy paste. Like the challenges we have around mental health, prevalence, accessibility, affordability, stigma, ineffective treatments, etc. Those problems are universal. No country in the world has figured out how to deal, kind of with mental health. And so for me, just from I'm a nerd, just from a nerd perspective, that was also really interesting, because I was like, okay, like this is also an opportunity to work in a space where we can be, kind of at the, forefront of mental health and mental health care. And that's how we started Shamiri in 2018 as a research organization, primarily because the idea was, okay, we want to work in mental health. We don't really know what's happening in mental health. So we need to, spend some time to really figure out, especially because we're dealing with people's health. So, like you have a very narrow, space to mess it up, because, worst case scenario, someone will kill themselves, so, you have to, kind of proceed cautiously. Thank you so much for listening to me. I will now stop here and see if there's any questions, comments, reactions from the floor.
So I was thinking to myself, and I was like, there's Tom in 2018. Not too sure of your model then, but then you have this idea and you've started on a bunch of people and you want to go to market. One, what was your go-to-market strategy then? And how has it changed after COVID to what it is now?
Yes, I think that's an interesting question, because we are actually only just coming up with a go-to-market strategy in the last 3 to 6 months. Like we didn't have a business model until like 2022. And we were really lucky because by the time we were thinking of coming up with a business model, we had done 3 years of research. I think we had spent over $2 million, kind of in R&D. And I think very few organizations are lucky to have that. And now actually finally we are starting to really think about the model. And the key thing that we are realizing that it's actually less of it's more like of the infrastructure than it is all of these like interventions, etc. It's how do you build, you can have the best intervention, but how do you build the infrastructure that allows people to access it, and how do you also make it affordable, right? So those are like the two, kind of like main things. But the model has evolved from wanting to work with individual consumers to realizing mostly Gen Zs or people under 35 are the ones who care about mental health, but they're too broke to be able to pay anything, so you can't build a business out of Gen Zs. Then we realize, okay, most of them are starting to become young professionals. Can we get their companies to care about this? You realize, okay, some companies do, some don't. The ones that do want you to work with insurance, so then we have to then readjust our model to work with insurance. And now we're starting to realize that there are some universities, not all of them, but there's some universities that actually care about mental health and will be willing to spend some part of their health fee around, paying for student mental health, right? Or, how do we work with NHIF and the government because actually Kenya has a very progressive mental health policy. Like the policy is very progressive. But then obviously, things are different on the ground, right? So, so how do you narrow down this difference, and can you build a business, out of that? Yeah, thank you.
So my question is, what are some of the most effective strategies Shamiri has used and has found to be effective when you're trying to get community buy-in for the products that you are putting out there? So what are these strategies that you use that have been very effective, and you're thinking if these are replicated, we can build more community around mental health?
Yes, I think I'll start with that. So the idea behind community is, and I think this taps into your first question, is we inherited from the West this very isolated approach to mental health and therapy. So we inherited from the West the idea that therapy is one-on-one. Right, so maybe if you're struggling with like loneliness or isolation, you go to therapy and you're also lonely and isolated because you're only talking to one person. And what we are realizing from, I think it's just African practice, but the more dominant African practices, but universally, is that mental health issues, yes, they're becoming more prevalent, but they just didn't begin in a lifetime or in 2 lifetimes ago. They've been there, for as long as humans have been there. And what has buffered us and what has really allowed us to navigate this in the past has been tapping into sociability and to social connectedness. And actually one of the reasons why mental health problems are becoming more prevalent is partially because of technology, as our world are becoming more isolated. So we're having less, physical interface with people. We're becoming more, kind of individualized and isolated, right? But we have an article called Decolonizing. It's on decolonizing mental health. If you just Google decolonizing mental health, Shamiri, it's an open access article where we write all of these things, and pretty briefly, it's for public consumption, right? Some of the approaches we are thinking about decolonizing. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your patience. I have really enjoyed this. I think this is the first time I've done something in this approach, and I hope you all, enjoyed it. Over to you.
I love the after-hours session today with Tom Osborn at Shamiri Institute. I think it's really important to have these conversations that affect us all, especially at work. And my key takeaway from this session was maybe that the role that community can play for mental health issues, which is not so emphasized in a Western context.
Hi there, my name is Sharon, and I have absolutely loved today's session with Tom. I am a mental health champion, and to have this topic discussed here today is a brilliant one, especially considering that it's not one that is usually discussed within the entrepreneurial environment. So I'm very happy about the topic. I think one thing that stood out today for me was the aspect of community and how Shamiri has been using that to sort of, promote mental health. So I applaud them for that, and I absolutely love the work that they're doing.
Wow, this was a really wonderful after hours. We had a really tough topic around mental health, and we tried to unpack it to the crowd. Everyone was very warm and welcoming and engaging, and people asked very deep questions afterwards. My hope is that everyone comes out of this with a deeper understanding about mental health, a commitment for their own mental health, and a way of finding opportunities that they can use to be able to deal with their mental health.